How much of an emergency fund should you have as a business owner? This is a question which is absolutely essential for the survival of any business. Now, when you're looking at an emergency fund, then there are two types of emergency funds that a business owner needs to think about. There's the business's emergency fund, and then the business owner's personal emergency fund that we need to look at in this video. So let's start off with your personal emergency fund, because that's probably the reason why you clicked on this video. The personal emergency fund that any business owner should have is an absolute bare minimum of 6 months of expenses. Now, you'll hear other people who talk about having 3 months worth of expenses, but that is too low for a business owner. Because as a business owner, you know that sometimes your business takes priority over your personal life, and you can't take out the money that you're normally taking as a business owner. So having an absolute minimum of 6 months of personal expenses is absolutely essential to your sanity and to your survival. Now, ideally, if you can stretch that to 9 months, 12 months, and even more than that, then that is much better. Having more than 12 months of personal expenses does become a little bit of a waste. Why? Because you could be using that money into investments. But as a business owner, the absolute minimum is 6 months, but ideally you want to have up to 12 months of expenses. Now, let's say, for example, especially in the UK, if you've maxed out your pension, you've maxed out your ISAs for the year, then you can obviously just use that as a cash cushion, especially because the FSCS has increased the protections on how much cash you can hold, and that is protected. I think as of December 2025, that has now increased to £120,000 per business account. So that's a key thing to understand here, that it's about per account with a banking license. So that doesn't mean that you can have 3 accounts with one bank and each one of those is £120,000 of protection, meaning let's say you've got 2, that's 240. No, that's not correct. You need to have separate banks and then bank accounts within those separate banks. So for example, you can have one 120,000 HSBC, and maybe you can have 120,000 in Barclays, and those two will be protected separately. You can't have 2 accounts in Barclays and 2 accounts in HSBC, and each one of those accounts is £120,000. No, that's not protected. So as a business owner, having about a year's worth of expenses up to £120,000, because that's protected, is what you want to do. Anything more than that, you want to be investing that money. And where you should be investing that money goes into how confident you are in your business, meaning the ability to reinvest money in your business, and for that to produce a higher profit. That is where you should be. That's the topic for another video. Now let's turn to the second type of emergency fund, which is the emergency fund for your business. Now, as a business owner, this is massively overlooked by business owners, but you need to have an emergency fund for your business. So just like you have a 6 months worth of emergency fund minimum for yourself as a person, meaning you've got enough to pay your rent, got enough to pay your mortgage, you've got enough to put food on the table, you need to think like that for your business as well. So the first layer or the first level of that is you need to, number one, calculate your operating expenses for a month. So calculate the salaries that you have to pay, calculate the rent that you have to pay on the building, calculate the heat, the light, all of that stuff. Put that all into a spreadsheet or put that into a calculator. What does that number come out to be? So let's say, for example, that number comes out to be 50,000 or 100,000 a month. Then that is your baseline of operating expenses. The minimum that you should have is 1 month's worth of operating expenses in your business account. If you're not there and you've got your personal of 6 months, you've got personal emergency fund of 6 months, this is what you need to be working on. You need to be working on getting a minimum of 1 month of operating expenses, cash balance in your bank. You're not taking that as profit. You're not reinvesting that money. You are just putting that as your baseline cash emergency fund for your business. Now you've got that number and you've got your first month. You want to try and grow that to 3 months worth of operating expenses. Why? We all have lived through COVID, and COVID taught us that nothing is for granted. The worst can happen, and if it happens, then you want to ensure that you've got enough cover, you've got enough cash cushion that your business continues to operate, so you can serve your customers and have a way of making money for yourself as a business owner. So growing from 1 month worth of operating expenses to 3 months worth of operating expenses is the next thing that you can be working on. Now, this can be a little bit slower, where the 1 month worth of operating expenses, you want to do that as soon as possible. You can grow a little bit slower to 3 months worth of operating expenses. So maybe you're putting 50% back into operating expenses and keeping the cash in your business, and maybe you're taking 50% out as profit and dividends for yourself. That's also fine. But getting to 3 months should also be one of the top priorities in your mind. That, right, I need to get to 3 months worth of operating expenses as an emergency fund for my business. Now, once you've got to 3 months worth of operating expenses as an emergency cash balance for your business, now you have a lot more options. You can now reinvest without having too much of a worry. You've got a cash balance there, you've got a cash cushion there, which if your investments, meaning you're investing in marketing, it doesn't work, it's not affecting you. It's not affecting the growth of your business. It's not affecting the stability of your business. This is what you need to look at. The growth of your business should not affect the stability of your business. The number one thing that you have to look at is the stability of your business. And then after that, you look at the growth of your business. Because as business owners, whether you've experienced or not, growth is expensive. You're investing in people, you're investing in marketing, you're investing in equipment, you're investing in the infrastructure of your business, you're investing in all of these things. You're buying assets, you're financing assets, whatever you're doing, you're paying a lot of money for growth. So look at the stability number of your business, get the emergency fund for your person, get the emergency fund for your business, and you will sleep better at night. Now, the biggest business owners, especially the ones who've been around for a long time, they do grow their cash balances much more than 3 months worth of operating expenses. I've heard of business owners who've got 2 years, and one in particular, which comes to my mind, I can't remember what his name is, he's got 6 years worth of operating expenses in his bank. Now, that's a huge number, of course. No one needs 6 years worth of operating expenses in their bank, just as a cash cushion. That I don't know why you would do that. Having about a year's worth of operating expenses and then using the rest purely on reinvesting into your business or putting into investments is what you need to do, right? Because that money is just sitting there and it's not really doing anything. Okay, it might be earning a little bit of interest if you take interest. If you don't take interest because you're Muslim, then that's obviously you're not even taking that. But you want to be investing into property, you want to be investing into growing your business, you want to be investing in other areas if you've got that kind of money sitting around. Yeah, in fact, I was watching a interview of Lord Sugar with Piers Morgan, and Piers Morgan was asking him that what's the largest check that you can write and that just gets cleared, and he was putting these numbers and it got to 100 million. Now don't forget, obviously Lord Sugar's a billionaire, so he said 100 million, and Lord Sugar said at that point, and he's a billionaire, right? He's saying, look, if I've got that kind of money sitting in my account, then I'm not a responsible business owner. So take a look at your own situation and see, right, how much am I taking out personally and how much am I taking out into investments? Remember, business is a game of winning, of course, and serving your customers, but it's also a game of multiplying your wealth. So look at yourself as a person and how many tax advantaged ways or tax benefit ways am I able to invest as a person? How many ways am I able to invest as a business owner? Having a holding company structure massively helps that as well. But that's a topic for another video. So an emergency fund is divided into two types for a business owner. One is personal and the other one is your business. Make sure you have at least 6 months for yourself and a minimum of 3 months for your business, and I'll see you in the next video.